This is Randy Sullivan, the host of Bourbon Real Talk. I grew up in a small town and went to a small church where everyone looked and thought like me. Over the years, I've gotten to know and love people from all different walks of life. This has made my world bigger and richer. The secret ingredient in forming those relationships was getting to know people's real stories. That helped me to identify with them, have compassion on them, and eventually develop a real connection with them. We live in a disconnected world today, and I want to do everything in my power to build connections between individuals who may not have attempted friendship otherwise. I've observed this happening in the bourbon community on its own because whiskey naturally brings people together. Bourbon Real Talk hopes to combine the world's new passion for bourbon into an opportunity to bring people together. We will share some whiskey knowledge, some good drams, and some real talk. So sit back, pour a drink, and open your hearts and minds. You might just find yourself feeling more connected to the people in the world around you, all fueled by bourbon. Hello, everybody out there in Bourbon Real Talk world. This is Randy Sullivan, and I'm coming to you today live from a very special location. We are at, what's the name of the distillery?
5 Points Distilling.
5 Points Distilling in Forney, Texas.
Forney, Texas, about 25 miles east of Dallas.
Awesome.
25 minutes, yeah.
And we just got done with a DFW Whiskey Club pick, which we'll talk more about later. But I'm here with, share your name.
Brandon Choate, pretty much do everything around here except for distill itself. But, I represent Lone Elm Whiskey wherever you see it.
Awesome.
So,
and that brings me to my next point. Your main whiskey is Lone Elm.
Correct, yeah.
Which I happen to have a bottle of right here. And we did just do a barrel selection. We also have already recorded this once.
In the distillery, we're in the tasting room now.
In the distillery, now we're in the tasting room. If the video quality is not that great for you, I apologize. For those of you listening on podcast, the lighting is not the best in here, but it's what we had to do because this is a working distillery, and I used up too much of their time fucking up the first recording, so we're having to redo everything.
Yeah,
But practice makes perfect. So
what are you gonna do?
I'm hoping exactly. What are you gonna do?
I'm telling you.
I literally said that to myself in the car on the ride over from the other location. So I want to do a real quick live review. So this is Lone Elm single barrel Texas whiskey, and tell us a little bit about this mash bill.
Sure, it's a Texas wheat whiskey. It's all grain to glass. It's a Texas red winter wheat that we source from local farmers that farm off the Trinity, and so it's a good red winter wheat, and we use a little bit of malted barley for distillation and enzyme. But you know what? We're in a category all on our own. We're a wheat whiskey, like a straight wheat whiskey, and it's incredible. And we're on the Texas Whiskey Trail, part of the Texas Whiskey Association. We just won gold in San Francisco and Denver for both of our whiskeys this year. So we're excited, man. We've been sitting on whiskey since 2015.
Nice. Okay, well, full disclosure, I've been drinking this since about 10:30 this morning.
Yes, he has.
And it's now 2:45. But we're still going to do a live review because you didn't see me taste it. So first off, on the nose, getting a fruit component that is pretty awesome. Someone's calling me, but that's okay. We're still recording. And one of the things that I noticed right off the rip with your whiskey is that I'm getting a dried fruit component that made me think for a moment that the whiskey was finished in Madeira cask or maybe port cask, because I'm getting a lot of port type flavors, like raisin-y type flavors. I think you mentioned cassis.
Dark black cherry.
Dark black cherry. And that's kind of unique for Texas whiskey. But in fact, this is not a finished whiskey. Is that correct?
It's not.
Yeah. So let's see how it tastes.
Something that someone said to me that you might find intriguing is, because I did, is when they were smelling it, they were like, "Oh man, I can smell the banana in there." And I'm like, "The banana?" And I didn't know banana was a flavor profile of whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like in our small batch, I mean, I smell banana. I don't know if you do, but
He has no idea how ironic that comment is. So
is you're a banana guy?
So that's the big joke, is that I get bananas out of a lot of.
We didn't plan this.
We did not plan this. And so
I had never heard that before until January, ever.
All right, so I'm going to tell a little story. So first off, all Brown-Forman products taste like bananas to me. Woodford, Jack Daniels, Old Forester, they all taste like bananas. I don't know if it's coming from their yeast. I've heard they use the same yeast, and I heard Jeff Arnett in a podcast say that they store each other's yeast at different locations for safety purposes in case there was a catastrophe, so they don't lose their yeast strain, which would lead you to believe that they all have their own yeast. But it would also be true if they all use the same yeast, that they have the yeast strain for the other location at the other location. So I don't know which is true, but I get bananas in all Brown-Forman products. And I even made, you know that meme that the guy's sitting like on a college campus at a table, and it says like something changed my mind. So I made a meme that said all Old Forester products taste like bananas, changed my mind.
Great.
And so
well, thank God we don't taste like bananas. We might, smell like them, but
yeah, I actually am not getting banana on this one, so kiss off all of you that think I always taste bananas. But I am getting a ton of Port and Madeira flavors. And I think also something that's significant is a little bit of a smokiness. And so if any of you guys have ever had, and you may not have liked it, but Balcones Brimstone has like this over the top smoke, like, campfire type flavor. And what I get in a lot of Texas whiskeys is like a muted down version of that, where there's a little bit of that campfire smoke, but not a lot. Do you think that has anything to do with the climate and the heat that you're aging the barrels in?
Absolutely.
Because I've wondered that, like, it is hotter here in Texas, and so the whiskey is moving in and out of the wood at a higher rate than it would, say, in Kentucky or even in Scotland. And so do you think that has a huge impact on what characteristics define Texas whiskey?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, just you're going to taste Texas.
Mm-hmm.
That's just plain and simple. I don't know if everybody can, put that to realization, but I mean, you're going to taste Texas ingredients. You're going to taste the grain, you're going to be able to taste everything.
Well, that's an interesting point. So when you taste Kentucky whiskey, what's the main flavor that you taste in the profile?
Per our earlier recording, I taste vanilla.
Vanilla.
Yeah.
You don't have to say that. They don't know you said it. He does. He has the right to roast my ass a little bit. But yeah, on the fly before he said vanilla, and I think that's an important point to make to those of you out there that are used to, this most of the people listening to this are probably bourbon nerds, right? And you train your palate, right? The truth is, I have a 12-year-old son. If I gave him George T. Stagg, do you think he'd like it?
Oh no.
No, he would fucking hate it. It would not be palatable to him. But when you give me George T. Stagg, like, I get like very excited about it because my palate has been trained that that's what good whiskey tastes like, right? And so do you think that Texas bourbon doesn't have as large of a following as it could because people have trained their palates towards one flavor profile?
No, I think it's because when people when there's a region that specializes in something, like let's say Californian wine or Kentucky and whiskey, or Mexico and tequila. I think when there's a specific region where people are used to getting that from, because they specialize in that, then they've trained their brain, not only their palate, but their brain to go for that. So I think, because Texas has a hard time with Texas wines because people are so used to California or French wines or Oregon Pinots. So they don't get the opportunity to really showcase their products. I think that started off with Texas products with distilleries, but I think, like, look at Tito's. Look at, like Iron Root winning like the best corn whiskey in the world.
Right.
So I think people are just starting to realize, like, oh, well, we don't have to stay in the backyard. We can go wander out and see what else is out there.
Sure. Well, and that's what I hope everybody gets from this recording. And we're going to be doing some more recordings at some other Texas distilleries as well. But, I'll admit, I have poo-pooed Texas bourbons and whiskeys in the past. And I did so because they tasted sweeter to me. And they didn't have those subtle vanilla flavors that I was used to. But for those of you who don't know this, Kentucky bourbons taste like vanilla, not because of the grains that they use when they're making Kentucky bourbon. The vanilla flavor comes from a compound called vanillin that is inside oak. And when you expose the whiskey to the oak over time, it pulls the vanillin compounds out. That's where the term vanilla comes from. And so it tastes like that. So most of what you're tasting in Kentucky whiskeys are from the barrel, the maturation process. Would you agree that a lot of what you taste, not all, because we do age, obviously, our whiskeys in oak barrels, but would you agree that the grain plays a larger profile component in Texas whiskeys?
Yeah, but it kind of sounds like a bias. I feel like I'm giving you a biased answer, but just because we're in the Texas Whiskey Association. I live in Texas. We make Texas product, but I think I don't know. That's a tough one. I think that you can taste Texas.
Right.
Yeah, I just think you can taste the grain so much more profound than you can in a lot of other spirits.
And that's one of the things that I think as whiskey connoisseurs we need to educate ourselves about, and that is that where are these flavors coming from that we're seeking, right? And in the case of Texas whiskeys, all of the Texas distilleries that I've gone to have sourced their grains as locally as possible. For whatever reason, maybe it's cost effective, or maybe they're trying to get a sense of terroir. So in the wine industry, there's this concept of terroir, that your wine should taste like the place that it came from. And that takes into account the climate, temperature change, elevation, average barometric pressure, what the soil's like, average rain yield per year, and all kinds of stuff. That's terroir. Do you feel like, whereas in Kentucky, terroir doesn't seem to be as big of a deal as I research, it has to do more with the maturation and aging process. Do you feel like Texas whiskeys are getting more of a terroir type sense?
I do. I think they're getting more of a terroir sense, simply because of just like the interaction that some of us had with the farmers or the malt houses here in Texas that grow these grains for us.
Right. So talk about that. So you guys are on the Texas Whiskey Trail.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners about that.
So the Texas Whiskey Trail is our distilleries that are grain to glass, that distill, bottle, and barrel, or barrel and bottle there at their distillery. They're certified Texas whiskey products, or certified, Texas products. But it starts in Denison at Iron Root. It'll come to us next, and then it goes to Grapevine, down to Waco, the Hill Country, and you'll end up in Corpus Christi. It's incredible. You get to, what you'll get, the VIP treatment if you're a member. You'll get their top shelf, or their cash strength, or just the better tour than the average person would get.
Right.
But we all treat everybody the same around here, though.
Right. And that's actually an important point to make, because if you go to Kentucky, they have a very produced tour There's somebody that's going to take you on the tour. They know the talking points for the tour. If you ask them a detailed question, chances are pretty good that tour guide, not always, but often, they don't know the answer. And that's because they're large commercial operations.
It's Disneyland with drinks.
Right. When you go to a Texas distillery, my experience is you guys roll out the red carpet.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And so I have done barrel selections, multiple barrel selections. When I did a barrel selection for Elijah Craig, for instance, the distillery rep showed up to the liquor store with 3 vials. I've done barrel picks at Iron Root and here for Lone Elm, and they're like, walk you back in the rick house, and they're like, point at a barrel and we will give you a taste out of it, right? It's just completely different. So this is Randy Sullivan with RSHST Capital LLC and the host of Bourbon Real Talk. Producing a podcast is time-consuming and expensive, and Bourbon Real Talk wants to maintain its integrity by not promoting products or services that it doesn't believe in. For this reason, I have opted to have my funding company sponsor this program. RSHST Capital is the first of its kind funding company that provides pay-at-close funding to home sellers out of their equity. If you have a home to sell, need money for renovations or repairs to maximize your profit, money to stop pending foreclosure or to keep your mortgage current, or cash for really anything, then look into RSHST Capital. This program is simple. We verify that you have equity, approve you for a funding amount. You have access to that cash at practically a moment's notice for only a nominal fee. This program is raising sellers cash after closing by tens of thousands of dollars, stopping foreclosures and changing people's financial future. You pick your real estate agent, your contractor, and have access to actual cash or contracting expenses with zero upfront cost. This is a nationwide program, so if you have any curiosity about how it works, please look us up at rshstcapital.com, Facebook, or just give us a call at 214-385-9101. So, the customer service level is off the charts when you go to these Texas distilleries.
Thank you for saying that.
You can see in the background, there is a sick-ass spread of olives and I don't even know what all's back there. There's all kinds of cheeses and like fruit and stuff. They really roll out the red carpet whenever you go to these places, and they have the time to do it. But I venture to guess that it's not always going to be like that. In the past, bourbon, nobody drank bourbon except for people that lived in Kentucky and old men, right? Now, all of a sudden, bourbon is in vogue and literally everyone's drinking it. And that's great. That's great for bourbon. But there was a time where people thought that good whiskey tasted like scotch, right? And the same thing happened in the wine industry. There was a time where people didn't think that good wine could come from California. And there was something called the Judgment of Paris. And there's a movie about it that kind of features Chateau Montelena, Beau something, I want to say Burnham or something. I know it starts with a B. And they submitted wines to a blind tasting in Paris. And Stag's Leap won for red wine, and Chateau Montelena won for white wine, I believe. And that kind of changed the world's perception that good wines can come from California. Do you foresee in the future that Texas wine could potentially have a shift where people understand that it has its kind of its own flavor profile, and people start to get on board with that?
Are you asking me about Texas wine compared to?
No, I'm sorry, Texas whiskey. Texas whiskey. Do you foresee that Texas whiskey, that there'll be a shift in the consuming public and they'll start to realize that Texas whiskey is almost a category of its own and it should be respected and not necessarily only compared to like Kentucky bourbon?
Absolutely. I think that everybody, first off, I think the states that surround Texas gravitate to what we're doing. And I just think it's easier to get for people like in Oklahoma. They drink the shit out of our whiskey.
Right.
People in Oklahoma, great supporters. Thank you so much, anybody in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma bourbon connoisseurs, love you guys. When these barrel selects come out, I'm going to be offering them up on the page, so be on the lookout.
Yeah, those people over there, man, they're great. But yeah, I think that people are just are realizing that even with the Texas wineries, that like, yeah, man, they're putting out great product, and we can step outside of our backyard and figure other things out. You know?
Right.
So, but yeah.
So I'm encouraging, if you're listening to this, I'm encouraging you to get on the right side of history and to stop with your whiskey bias and start just judging things based on your palate. Because I'm telling you, I've done 2 Texas barrel picks in the last week or week and a half. And all of the barrels that I tasted from, their flavors were bold. They were, off the charts. And no, it didn't taste like, the Kentucky bourbons that I collect. And I mean, I have probably 125 open bottles of Kentucky bourbon. It's not like I don't love it. I do. But as a Texan, I think that there's going to be a shift at some point in the future. And the distilleries that are here, like you guys, Iron Root, Balcones, Garrison Brothers, some of the others, Witherspoons, all those guys.
Treaty Oaks.
Yeah, I feel like you guys are on the forefront, the cutting edge, and you're going to bring change, and people are going to eventually shift. So I'm asking you guys to get rid of your bias and get out there and buy some of this whiskey. Lone Elm is amazing. I mean, it's got so much flavor. It is so good. And that's coming from somebody who just even recently, as a couple weeks ago, was kind of snubbing my nose at some of this stuff. Because if you train your palate, right? Like I said, if I gave my son GTS, he would hate it. But over time, he'll probably learn to see that as a premium product like I have. If you compare it to what your palate says tastes good, you'll probably love it. But if you compare it to what your brain says it's supposed to taste like because you've trained your brain to like one thing, you're probably not going to like it as much. Is that something that as a distillery you guys fight against at this stage in the process?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's just because people are so used to having their brown spirits from that region, and just like people are starting to realize that, there's different regions throughout the United States and, that border us as well, that, those don't have to be the specific regions just because that's what they specialized in, that they venture out and find other things. But yet as a distillery, we find that as, not really as a problem, but, I wish people would just, open their palate up a little bit more. And, when you said something, I wanted to stop you, but you were like, as a Texan, and that's when I was like, that's right, man, we're Texans. We support Texas distilleries and, Texas products. I mean, we're part of Go Texan. Yeah. But like, yeah, I think that, people are just gonna, continue to gravitate towards Texas products, Texas whiskey, and Texas spirits in general.
Yeah,
it's a big boom right now, and it is, right?
It is, yeah. And I think what's happening is they're bringing in a lot of new consumers who don't have a preconceived notion. Like, I'm sure you guys send people out to liquor stores to like give samples out. And do you guys
like
do
tastings and stuff?
Yeah, tastings. Yeah. Do y'all hire the membos or do you send distillery workers out?
Normally I do them.
Okay.
So I do tastings in Arkansas, Louisiana. I do them in East Texas. I travel from one tip of Texas down to the other. You can ask anybody that knows me in this business how much I drive. But and the reason I do that, because, I have a tasting team in a couple different states, and they do great jobs. But because I'm here and I'm so involved in this, and this is my passion now, I want to make sure they're getting the right information. And I want to make sure that, not only do I, introduce myself, but I introduce the concept of Texas and other Texas distilleries and the good people, the associates that we come across, like the, Tex Malt and Maverick out in the Panhandle. Those are, I mean, it's a good family to be in.
Right. And so a lot of people probably don't realize this, but you guys, the Texas distillers tend to kind of work together.
Oh yeah.
Right. Not necessarily completely viewing each other as competitors, but really working together to educate the public.
Yeah, and they do, they also do a lot of collaborations, and sometimes not everybody knows about those collaborations. Like, I was at the Texas Whiskey Fest in Austin, and Crowded Barrel, and Balcones and Iron Root, they did some sort of collaboration, I believe. But not everybody knows about that. There's certain people in certain groups that get those bottles. They were selling, but I know that was for a charity fund, but yeah, we're all friends, and I consider those guys, good people, good friends, and they want to help you, especially if you're a newer distillery, or you've been sitting on your whiskey a while waiting for it to age, and now you're ready to get into the market. There's people out there that want to help you. Like, man, I'm telling you, like Iron Root, for instance. Like, when I met the Licorice Brothers and their mother Marcia, like, they were so friggin' nice to me, and they're like probably my favorite people in this business. And all they want to do is, like, when you're at a trade show, they're like, well, if you need something, let me know, or can we help you with this, or they show me how to do things. It's really awesome. Good people. So, yeah.
And I'm going down to record with, or going not down, up, way up, almost to Oklahoma, to record with Robert on, I think, Monday. Today's, I don't remember, Friday. So anyway, we've got a recording coming from them. But it's interesting to see how in this industry you guys have a common foe, which is preconception, right? And I mentioned to you, this show is basically about breaking down prejudices, right? Whether it be prejudices across racial lines, sexual orientation, anything else. But we all love whiskey, right? And whiskey brings people together. I've learned that, I went to Atlanta to a store that did a first come, first serve on their allocated bottles in December. And I showed up, and me and my buddy were 17 and 18 in line. And I didn't know anyone's name. I knew their order number in the line, and we literally called people out by their number. And it's like, hey, number 2, can I sit in your truck for a minute and warm up? Because it was raining and it was cold. And we were all like Bourbon family. And bourbon brings people together, or whiskey brings people together, not just bourbon. And that's the purpose of the show. But I think in this case, we might be able to break down maybe not racial barriers or orientation barriers or anything like that, but maybe some barriers about preconceived notions about what Texas whiskey is supposed to be.
I'll tell you what most distilleries here in Texas, what the major problem is, what people are having big deals with, is that, the big chains, the big chains that, they don't see case sales, so they don't want to pick you up. Well, you know what? If you're going to have a gigantic distributor pick you up, they're probably going to back shelf you. You're going to have to take it upon yourself to make sure you're in those stores. Or if you have a smaller distributor that, like a big distributor, like a big wholesaler, like let's say Specs doesn't get along with it, you're going to get no shelf space. You're going to get no sales, no case movement, and that's going to hinder your business. And that's also going to hinder the consumer's thought process about, like, well, they're not selling, they're not getting this, I'm going to go back to my Kentucky bourbon. So that's a big hurdle for us,
So let's talk about that. Like,
for all distillers,
here in Texas. So is that your main problem? Is your main problem distribution?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can give you 5 other names of distilleries here in Texas that have distribution problems with other distributors and have wholesale problems with other wholesalers. So
right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I listen to a lot of whiskey related podcasts because I drive all the time as a realtor, and that I've heard that multiple times, not just from you, but all small distilleries seem to struggle with distribution. And so because of our 3-party system, you've got the manufacturer, you got the wholesaler, and you got the retailer. You have to get a wholesaler that believes enough in your product to distribute it. But there's various levels of belief, apparently, where they may agree to carry the product, but they're not promoting it the way that it needs to be promoted. Is that the case? Maybe not for you in particular, but in general.
No, I don't think it's them not promoting it. I think it's that they don't see the they don't know who you are, or they haven't seen you. You're not recognized because you're not on shelves. They don't see you. So I mean, that's why you have to go to these trade shows and do what is it called, experiential marketing, where people are actually touching, tasting, feeling, talking, listening, about the product. And that's another reason why I go to all these places. But yeah, I mean, let me just tell you, the wholesaler and the distribution problem, that's a motherfucker.
Right.
And I will say this though,
This is Randy Sullivan with the Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team and the host of Bourbon Real Talk. Producing a podcast is time-consuming and expensive, and Bourbon Real Talk wants to maintain its integrity by not promoting products and services that it doesn't believe in. For this reason, I've opted to have my real estate team sponsor this program. The Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team has operated since 2008. We've sold almost 500 homes. We have proprietary programs that make a massive difference to the outcome of our clients, and we service the entire North Texas area. If you live in North Texas and you need to buy or sell a home, please give us a chance to explain how our services could benefit you. We understand that not all of our listeners live in North Texas. We also know that not all real estate agents are created equal. If you need a real estate agent outside of North Texas, the Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team has access to tools to help you find a highly qualified agent in your area. The service is free for you, and we stick around through the end of the process to help you with your transaction, even when we're not your agent. If you have a real estate transaction in your future, please reach out to us at randallsullivanteam.com, Facebook, Instagram, or just give us a call at 214-385-9101.
Can I say who a good distributor is?
Oh, you can. I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, I don't
You're
give
not
a
going to
shit.
get me
No,
in trouble.
no, let me
I don't
just
give
tell
a
you
fuck.
So here's the thing. You can go to a big distributor, like I said, and get shelved. And I know a certain distillery that has phenomenal products and it's happening to them. And because they're getting shelved in the back of a big distributorship, they're also getting they're getting the jiff at the wholesaler too. Mm-hmm. So if Specs doesn't see a certain thing, they won't pick you up in all 164, 165 of their stores, mm-hmm. Or even 40 of them. But if you take your price way down, or they get the margins they want, you're going to get that. But here's the thing: that's because of the distributor. So, right. And it's a big problem. It's almost playing leapfrog, and the frog in the middle is way too fucking big to get over. Right. You know what I mean? Because I got to get to that wholesaler.
You got to get case sales up.
Yeah.
To get the shelf space that you need.
Right.
To even get exposure to the customer you want.
Absolutely. And
you can't get the case sales up because no one's helping with that.
Right.
And so let me ask you this, Bourbon Real Talk listener. Do you want your exposure to whiskeys to be determined by some profit-driven wholesaler or distributor, or do you want it to be based on the flavor of the whiskey?
Because you can buy in distilleries in Texas.
Because I want to drink what tastes good to me. I don't want to drink what the wholesaler thinks is going to be profitable. And so that's another reason to be seeking out these Texas whiskeys and kind of get rid of your preconception. So that's actually really, really good information. So let's talk about pricing. So I'm going to say it. Your whiskey's fucking expensive. So can you tell everybody how much you love your new Maserati?
I do not have a Maserati. I took a big pay cut so I could, help build this brand. And, I'm very passionate about, this distillery, this brand, the people that I've come in contact with, my colleagues. I mean, I'm in it, mm-hmm. And I'd like to get paid more, but until I make this brand known more, I'm willing to sacrifice that. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's not a sacrifice because I'm meeting I think you're a great guy. I mean, the people in the business because they have that same passion that I do.
Right. And so the point that I'm trying to make, a lot of people in the whiskey nerd world understand what it's like to, operate off of a profit and loss statement. It's expensive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and there's not economics of scale. So when you guys, I think you said you have around 500 barrels of whiskey aging, and
Yeah, but think about how much we've spent on product and distillation and hours, and then they're barreled, and then they age, and then how much angel share you lose. So I mean, you kind of have to make up for that.
Right. And so, keep in mind that when you guys go out and buy a amazing shelf product like Four Roses small batch, right, or Elijah Craig small batch, how many millions of barrels did they have aging in that product?
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally in the millions, right? This location, and it's literally on the other side of that wall, has 500 barrels, and half of those are not even 53-gallon barrels.
Right. We started off with we did R&D with like 2 to 3 gallon barrels, maybe fives, and then we moved to 15-gallon barrels, where we found our niche and we could get the most of that. That was the thing when we started this.
You couldn't get barrels.
53-gallon barrels were, no, I'm sorry, you couldn't get them.
You couldn't get them.
We just did 15-gallon barrels, and the product it put out, we opened a 2-year. I mean, shit, we won the Chairman's Trophy Cup, second place to a Pappy Van Winkle. I mean, that's something else, dude.
Right.
I'm telling you. But so we did 15-gallon barrels, and then we moved into 30s, and now I got 53s back there aging.
Right. And so just so you guys know, barrel size has to do with contact, right? So the smaller barrels have more contact.
Temperature.
The whiskey has more contact with the wood. And so the smaller barrels theoretically can age faster. The other thing is that we have much higher temperatures here in Texas. So let's talk about angel share. So for those of you that are newer in the whiskey world, angel share is the amount of whiskey that evaporates out of the barrel as the whiskey ages. In Scotland, they lose 1.5% to 2% per year. In Kentucky, according to my Buffalo Trace tour guide, they lose 3 to 5% per year. How much do you guys lose?
Anywhere from 10 to 15.
10 to 15% per year to evaporation. So think about that. Like, everybody loves Weller 12. If you lose 10 to 15% per year and you try to age a Texas whiskey for 12 years, what would it be like?
I guess it really depends on what region of Texas you're in. But if you're in a very hot climate of Texas,
How about here?
I'd probably say you're going to get a really resonated whiskey, like the bottom of the barrel, I would say, because I think it would almost completely evaporate.
Would it be possible that there was no whiskey?
There could be possible. It could be what would you call it?
It's so there's a concept called a phantom barrel.
And I have a few of those.
Yeah. So a phantom barrel is phantom barrel is when they age it so long that all of the whiskey evaporates and they open it up and there's nothing in it. In Kentucky, that tends to happen somewhere around 18 years on average. But in Texas, that could start happening at 6, 7, 8 years. And because we're trying to taste the grains here and not as much of the barrel, and yes, there are molecular interactions that happen inside the barrel that take time, that can't be rushed. I get that. If you do the research on all of the fast aging, real quick, what's the dog's name?
Pronto. Blue Heeler.
Pronto is a Blue Heeler. He's been with us all day long, and he is ready to play ball. His daddy has been busy with me for too long. So yeah, I mean, there are molecular, chemical reactions that happen inside the barrel that take time. They can't be rushed. But Texas whiskey isn't necessarily trying to capture that flavor, right? They're trying to capture a different flavor that's more terroir driven and less driven by the exposure to the wood.
Well, if I could piggyback on that, I mean, that's the whole concept behind grain to glass.
Mm-hmm.
Grain to glass is, they want you, and we want you to taste every ingredient that you possibly can. And grain to glass is also no additives, no colorings, no GMOs. And to me, that's extremely important, because I've tasted all that shit before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have too.
Right.
Yeah. bet you a majority of you out there have. But when you finally get a grain to glass product, that's why A, it's more expensive, and B, you can taste everything.
Right. And so
and the sugars are way down in it as well.
So when we go back to the pricing conversation, so we've got we are in a scenario where we lack economics of scale, right? We're in a scenario where our materials cost is actually quite high, because, and we're going to talk more about this in one of the following podcasts. And your economics are a little bit different, and you don't buy the grains, so you didn't have the numbers when I asked you before. But I was talking with a Texas distiller, and his materials cost for one of the materials that he used was literally 60 times. Think about that, 60 times the cost of the average Kentucky distillery. And so when you see a Texas, there aren't very many Texas whiskeys that I don't know of any distributed Texas whiskeys that are less than 40, I don't think, or bourbons, the better ones. And you guys product, your premium products are somewhere around what, 55, 60? Or
our small batch goes for like a 46, like 99 at, like Goody. And then the single barrel, which is statewide only at Goody, is 65.
65, right.
But it's different in different places.
Right. And so when you guys go out there and you go, why would I spend $65 on this bottle when I could go out and get this well-known Kentucky distillery, offering that's always available on the shelves? There's a reason why that is. He's not going to leave here in a Maserati today, right? Everybody that works here probably took a pay cut to work here because of their passion. And this place isn't making tons of money yet. They're trying to build something, and we need to get on board with that as a community.
Let me ask you this: How do you think Kentucky got to be where it is? I mean, because what you were saying is, why would somebody spend this amount of money on this type of whiskey when they can go get the Elijah Craig on the shelf? And how many barrels does Elijah Craig have? That's the difference between us. Like, we're grain to glass. We proof, taste, everything. I mean, we're a small organization. The big boys in Kentucky, that's what they are. They're big boys. I mean, we as consumers, I feel, don't know how much quality control is actually going on there, or really understand what type of ingredients are going in there.
Sure.
So that to me is extremely important, and that's not hating on Kentucky by any means, because
you're allowed to. You're a Texas whiskey company.
Hey, it doesn't matter. I mean, like I mean, Wild Turkey used to be my thing, man, and just like I love Kentucky product, but the whole reason that they're having such a boom is because the average whiskey bourbon drinker, like Blanton's is so hard to find. That's because everybody wants it, because they see it on like these websites and these Facebook groups and stuff like that. There's hunters out there that hunt for this shit. And what does that do? It drives the price. Then this goes back to the fucking distributor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're only allocating what they want to allocate. They're
right.
fucking everybody over.
Right.
I mean, they're fucking the main consumer, so they can sell it to the wholesaler for a higher price. And what does the wholesaler have to do? They have to sell it for a higher price. And you know what? Think about it. These motherfuckers in Kentucky got millions of barrels.
Right.
Maybe not millions, but they got it.
They literally have millions.
Yeah, they got enough.
Now, not Bland's because it's only warehouse H. But the point being,
you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Though.
The point being that, there are allocated bourbons out there that the wholesaler makes more money by keeping it rare, keeping it allocated, and we're all kind of their dupes. Right. If you have if you want to get access to rare whiskey, you have to go make a friend at a liquor store. Once you make a friend, ask them, what do you have to do to get Buffalo Trace Antique Collection or Pappy Van Winkle when it gets released? But get ready, because you're going to get an earful, because they got to jump through a lot of hoops. They got to buy a lot of unknown vodkas and things like that to even get in the good graces of the distributor, so that the distributor will sell them some of those allocated products so that they can keep you, their regular customer, happy, right? But the reality is that there's excellent whiskey out there readily available for the taking. And we need to stop being the dupes of the system that's manipulating everybody for profit purposes and start tasting things and drinking things that taste good to our tongue when it touches it, right? That's the purpose of this.
Think about this. Why do we not sell liquor on Sundays? Think about that.
Blue or like old school laws.
It's old school, but yeah, but like these wholesalers and distributors, I mean, they lobby for us to be closed. For us as a distributor to not be able to sell on Sundays, they lobby for smaller stores and all that sort of shit to be closed on. So that's their day off, and like we want to bring that back into legislation, like like we want to sell on Sundays at our distillery. We want to sell more than 2 bottles per person. Think about this. You can go to a store and buy a case of your favorite spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to a distillery, by law, only buy 2 bottles per person per month.
Mm-hmm.
How insane is that, man? How is a small craft distillery supposed to make it because of that, with that involved?
Right. And that's something that you guys maybe haven't been exposed to before, but the reality is there are very powerful lobbies out there that dictate what you are going to be exposed to as a consumer. And he's making reference to that, right? Like you can visit the distilleries, but they're supposed to keep track of who they've sold bottles to, and they can only sell so many bottles per person per a certain amount of time. Some of that is consumer protection law. Some of that has to do with some of the laws that are in place are meant to keep people from like running a liquor store without a license, right? And that's good, right? Some of the laws that are in place are to stop rectifiers from selling people whiskey that has, hydrochloric acid in it so it burns when you drink it. That's good. But some of it in today's age is probably really not so much consumer protection, even though that's how it gets pushed through the legislature. Some of it's probably has to do with protecting people's position of profit.
Well, I see that, but think about. Let me put it to you like this: you can buy marijuana in Colorado statewide any day of the week, but
right.
You can't fucking buy liquor from a store in Texas on Sunday.
You can't buy liquor at all from a Costco or if you've not traveled outside of the state, like I've gone to a grocery store in many different states and they've got liquor sitting on the shelves.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Costco's the biggest distributor in the world. You know that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And now some of the Costco's, because Costco's powerful enough, they have been able to get licenses to have liquor stores.
They have a lot of their own brands too.
Right. And for any of you who don't know, they completely manipulated their allocated bottle release this year and pissed a lot of people off. And you could almost predict who was going to win the bottles at their because they manipulated it, and they have that power and they can do that, and we're being manipulated as consumers. And I want us to get smart and stop allowing people to do that to us. So,
well, you know what? Just like the Kentucky has the Bourbon Trail, you don't think all those guys are allies? That they all work, like a well-oiled machine? I think they do.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, I listen to the blogs. They're all friends.
That's exactly how we are in Texas. Except Texans are more friendly and the women are more beautiful.
I would have to agree with that. And for any of my listeners that are in Kentucky, especially my female listeners, we're not talking about you.
No, not
you. You are a 10 for sure. Amazing. But just traveling around, there are a lot of beautiful women here in Texas. So anyway, guys, I hope that we can walk away from all of this. You know what I want? I want you to have as much passion about Texas whiskey as this dog does about this tennis ball.
Support local.
That's what I want. For those of you who cannot see, Pronto is aggressively trying to get us to play fetch right now.
Stop.
Yeah. So I want you guys to open up your minds. I want you to travel out to Lone Elm and check out the distillery. When are you guys open for visitors?
We are open from 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. Or if you call me, I'll drive up here and unlock it and give you a tour myself.
Okay.
Or a tasting myself.
How can people get in contact with Lone Elm?
with Lone Elm. You can go to lone-elm.com. You can go to our Facebook, Instagram.
Is there a distillery phone number they can call? Is there?
I mean, yeah, there is. I mean, if you Google if you Google 5 Points Distilling, we'll come up, and every number, every Facebook, Instagram, email comes directly to me, Brandon Choate, and you're pretty much always going to talk to me, and I set everything up. But I mean, like, I'm very personal, and I want to make sure you have the best experience you can with our product and our brands, and I just want to make sure that you enjoy your time while you're here. That's all.
And I can tell you, so DFW Whiskey Club came down here. We ended up buying 3 barrels, but don't get excited because they weren't 53-gallon barrels. They were actually 15s, and they've been aging for some time.
5 years.
And so we're losing 10 to 15% per year. And so there's not going to be that many bottles. And so we had a debate while we were here about, should we contemplate doing a small batch so that the same whiskey is available at all of the stores that we're going to distribute this through. And what we decided is that none of us here are experienced enough to do a legitimate blend. And so we decided we are going to release this as 3 separate single barrels. And each barrel may only yield 30 bottles or so.
It depends on how full they are. I mean, I didn't personally check, but I mean, those, like, on the best day, I get 60 bottles out of those, 60 plus bottles out of, like, maybe between 60 and 70 bottles out of a 15-gallon.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, those are pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So those
we should be okay.
Yeah. But something else that I these guys, they can come out here and they can do their own blending. We have we have a master blending class. If y'all want to make a 53-gallon barrel for your group, by all means, y'all can come out here and blend it. Y'all don't have to y'all can use our recipe, or y'all can come up with your own.
Right.
And we'll show you how to do it.
So the point being is that they're flexible. They'll work with you. If you own a liquor store, their products are delicious. Consider it. If you're a whiskey club, consider it. We are going to be releasing these 3 barrels. They are not going to produce enough to satisfy the demand of the club. And I think there were like 10 different people here tasting. And I suspect, hold on, let me throw this ball for Pronto. I suspect that everybody that was here tasting is going to want a bottle of each of the 3 barrels, which means that our 40 to 50, maybe 60 count is going to be reduced by at least 10. So
that just means you're going to have to come out here and pick some more
we
barrels.
may have to pick some more barrels, but I want you guys to get excited about all of this. Is there anything else that you feel like people need to know about your distillery before we, wrap it up?
Well, we're gold medalist winners. We're very proud of that. We're having a nice little barbecue cookout distillery tour, kind of fun thing, May 11th. If you guys want to come check that out.
I don't know if this will be released by May 11th, but
yeah, just go ahead and put that out there.
Put it out there.
Yeah.
And so, but you can check their website and check to see what events they have coming up. But anyway, so excited for you guys to join us. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Pleasure.
And check out some Lone Elm Wheated Whiskey because it is delicious, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.